Imagine living on less than $2 a day. Could you feed your family, send your children to school, plan their future? This is the reality for 1 billion people around the world.
Land is the key source of income, nutrition, status, empowerment. It is the principal source of livelihood and well-being for still about half of the world's population, and importantly, for more than 3/4 of the poor people on the planet. Agriculture is their means of livelihood, and the relationship to the land is absolutely critical to their status, their security, and indeed the lives of their children.
Since 1970, Landesa has been creating pro-poor land law programs for tenant farmers, which espouses the idea of land to the tiller. Only secure land rights can alleviate poverty.
So we envision a world free of poverty in which all men and women who depend on land for their livelihoods have secure legal title to that land. And we champion land rights for millions of the poorest men and women around the world in order to increase opportunities and promote social justice.
I was teaching property law at the University of Washington Law School. One of my students asked me what I thought of a law review article that talked about land reform in Latin America, but urged that it be done in a violent way. And it seemed to me that was not likely to succeed in that setting. I proposed that there should be greater attention to a democratic model of land reform. And very surprisingly, ended up doing a land reform law for South Vietnam. Quite unexpectedly, we were among the first, or perhaps the first, to work on the land issue in the period from the mid-60s onward. We've been able to influence the design and adoption of land reform programs that have reached about 120 million families and helped to bring those families out of poverty.
Inspired by Roy Prosterman, his mentor and professor, Tim Hanstad joined in 1986 and became the co-founder of Landesa.
So Landesa realized some time back that changing land rights to strengthen the rights of the world's poor wasn't enough, because women were not sharing equally in those benefits, and that women are often the critical key to development. We have taken a very deliberate approach to ensuring that a gender equality and women's rights, when women in particular have their land strengthened, that empowers women dramatically. That leads to giving them a voice in their communities, better outcomes for the family. So all sorts of ripple effects for the family itself, but then also for society at large. Land has a tremendous impact on deforestation, on climate change, on conflict, on rule of law. So we see land as fundamental to all of those different areas. And when we work on land, we're really working on land as a tool towards addressing all of these other issues.
I mean, it's always really impressive to hear the beneficiaries themselves speak to why the kind of work we're doing with their government or with civil society organizations is making a difference for them. So for example, when I was in India, we went to a women's support center and watched live a kind of training for women about their legal rights to land. It included not just land rights, but also tactics for them to feel comfortable and feel empowered and not afraid to speak to men and to officials about their land rights. To me, watching that course and seeing how we were bringing land rights alive for them and also transforming her ability to help her family and be helped by her family. So to me, that always stands out to me.
In India, there are nearly 80% of rural women are engaged in agricultural work, but the statistics shows us that less than 13% own land. So when it comes to inheritance, we have very progressive laws and policies in India that allow women to inherit land. But the patriarchy, the social norms do not allow women to inherit land. So our role as Landesa, we try to provide land literacy, try to make the women aware about their rights. We are also trying to provide the government officials, they build their capacity, make them aware why it's needed to basically focus on women. When women are empowered, they are able to, educate their children, make a better life of the family, and then the communities change and the whole nation changes.
Landesa 可以说是最先在国内提出妇女土地权益问题。妇女大了过后，她要出嫁，但是出嫁离婚，土地是没法动的，把土地没法带走。中国现在正在做的一轮就是土地登记。我们在对土地登记的开始之前，我们就向有关部门就建议，你总得要把妇女的名字要列在你这个土地登记的权利的证书上面。花了5年多的时间，国家投了上百亿。一个要求就是要把家庭成员全部都登记在内，包括妇女的名字。
随着中国经济的逐步发展，我们呢我们的更多的把重点呢放在什么呢？就是怎么样让农民能够过上更加体面、更加有尊严的生活，能够受到公平的对待。中国现在城市化率大概有57%左右。在2011年达到51%，第一次这个城市人口超过了农村人口。实际上，最近中国社会科学研究院他们出了一个报告，就是到2030年的时候，中国的城市化率要达到70%以上，将会有更多的人口会从农村转移到城市，会有更多的土地由这个农用土地转化为城市的用地，而在这个过程当中，肯定会涉及到很多关于农村土地的问题，比如说征地，比如说规模经营，当然还有在农村妇女的土地权益怎么样得到保障。所以我们 Landesa 我觉得在中国未来，我们还是能够希望在这些领域里面持续的跟中国政府合作，能够给他们提供这方面的政策支持。
Most of our work in Africa has been through invitation by government. We work closely with governments in addition to civil society, both at the national level and then sometimes also at the more local level. In Africa, most of the land is held in customary land tenure systems. There aren't formal titles that many of us might be used to having, but rather land is controlled by customary groups of people that have used the land for many, many years. But in Africa, one thing that we find is that there are tremendous energy by women and men on the ground who are fighting for proactive change. At the same time, there is a real willingness among some governments to change things. There's a recognition that things haven't worked in the past in a way that's benefited people equitably, in a way that's created a good basis for political security, political stability, and even in a way that's led to the long-term success of investments, of private sector investments, that will both help people in communities to benefit from these investments in a different way, but also that will help the investors themselves to have a better security for long-term return.
Our most immediate target right now is Myanmar, where we see huge opportunities. We are also building out our work in sub-Saharan Africa. We've just set up an office in Tanzania. We're increasing work across a number of countries in East Africa and some in West Africa. So those are also high priorities for us.
Although we've had considerable success and reached perhaps 120 million households with secure land rights over the 50 years of our work, I suspect there may be another 50 years of work to be done before we can say that virtually everyone on the planet has secure rights to the land on which they depend for their livelihood. For that, 3/4 of the world's poor who are dependent on agricultural land, for them to become owners or secure holders of long-term land rights, including land rights for women, which is something that needs to be emphasized as being of very great importance. That there's at least as much work to be done as has already been done. So I perhaps will not be around for the next 50 years, but hopefully Landesa will be around for the next 50 years. And by all means, persist, be stubborn, stay with it,